So I think if I was a rich landowner in Jesus' time, how could I be expected to enjoy my God-given wealth with all that complaining going on in the background? But then one minister in the prosperity movement said that he encourages his congregation to help the poor by not becoming one of them. When he said this, I thought for a moment, I was having another Oprah moment, that my eyes had been suddenly opened wide to the gospel. What better way to help the poor than by not becoming one of them? But the fact is, I think my conscience is getting the better of me, and your prayers must be working. So where is the seriousness in this so-called sermon? It's all pretty serious if you ask me. Greed is serious business. But I hope that this morning that you can see the message embedded, albeit very deeply, in the satire, that you can see it for the social critique it's meant to be. What if we're being asked in our parable to consider that maybe this isn't a story about a generous landowner or even a representation of what equality and fairness should look like in the kingdom of heaven? What if the parable is a social critique? Jesus starts out the parable, "For the kingdom of heaven is like a landowner." We often hear Jesus say in the Gospels that the kingdom of heaven is at hand. It is here and now. And in first century Palestine, the kingdom of heaven was indeed like a landowner. Landowners were members of the elite urban class, and many of them profited off of the misfortune of the poor, sometimes seizing peasant farmland when a farmer defaulted on his debt repayments. So my problem with interpreting this parable in the typical way is that the landowner usually is interpreted as a symbol for God. But I think the original hearers of this parable, peasants themselves, would have understood that the term landowner was functioning as a symbol for the oppressive elite. Furthermore, we have to be mindful that Jesus lived in an honor-shame culture. The fact that the landowner wants the first hired laborers to see what the last hired laborers were receiving in payment, I think, is a challenge to the first honor. In other words, the landowner humiliates them by conducting this transaction in front of them. When they grumble, the landowner uses a condescending form of the word friend to insult their honor again, this time by saying, "I can do what I like with my money and my land." Jesus' audience would have seen the scandal because the land belonged to Yahweh and to no one else. There are many more reasons why I personally don't accept the typical interpretation of this parable. But my hope is that you'll take the parable away with you and wrestle with it yourself. There is a great Jewish tradition of arguing with the teacher, and I quite frequently argue with Jesus. So I think most of us in our lives just want to live comfortably. I don't think there's any shame in that. I think for our purposes, we need to be alert that the comfort is not coming at the expense and the pain of others. We would do well to remember that the kingdom of heaven is not a place. It's a way of being, a way of behaving. It's learning how to be responsible for each other here and now. As Christians, we've inherited the responsibility to make the kingdom visible and to critique the powers of greed and oppression, whether we do that through satire or through parables. But always doing it to bring about the kingdom. In closing, I actually did grow up quite poor. And I'm not actually as greedy as I pretend to be. This is satire. But if you particularly liked the sermon today, or even if you didn't, please don't hesitate to send a wee little something my way. My bank details are available from the church office. Thank you.